Exactly where you want and need to be. I mix what I like organic, vegan, soul food from your immediate diet. Get healthy.
I mix what I like, what I like.
We're here on I Mix What I Like. You may check us out on imixwhatilike.org, where you can see all these other shows and what my daddy likes and other cool things.
All right. Yes, indeed. What's up, world? Welcome back to Black Liberation Media. I Mix What I Like, live on a Monday morning. I am Jared Ball, very happy to be your host. Please do all of the things as you come on in. Like, share, subscribe, put this in your socials. Let other folks know to come join you. Tag Black Liberation Media. Support the Patreon. All the links in the show description. Yes, sir. Brother Jamil's in the building. Welcome, everybody. So just off the top, got a number of things to get to this morning, but I will... and due to some scheduling hiccups with Dr. Ray Wimbush, what I thought was going to happen this morning is going to happen later today at 12 noon. So we're going to come back again at noon for a discussion of reparations and some latest developments here in Maryland. And what does that mean for the broader reparations struggle? So come on back at 12 noon for that. Also, yeah, the relationship between the cannabis industry and reparations will be on the menu. So all I want to say to Maryland reparations recipients, you're welcome. I am doing my duty to support your reparations. And mine. and mine. I qualify. I'm going to ask Dr. Wimbush about that. I've been reading Sandy Darity's latest work on the subject and how they break down who qualifies. And I do under that rubric. So I just want to make sure, Anyway, welcome everybody to the Remixers, the Undefeated Chat. Greetings to you. Welcome, welcome. And to those who will see this later, welcome to you as well. Thank you very much. It is the space I've been allowed to inhabit in this house of ours. And I'm in the middle of a little redesign. I'm feng shui. I'm gonna try to do a little feng shui thing over the winter here. And but yeah, but with Dr. Wimbush, I think it was ultimately my error here. So that's gonna happen at 12, but I didn't want to, of course, abdicate this 8 a.m. morning because I know it's such an important, again, for me, it's my favorite, time to time slot, most convenient, but one we want to try to maintain here on the platform until I can get the remix family to commit to one more day. Almost got them. Almost got the full work week, but okay. Yeah, we heard. Yes, cynical asking about what they're describing as a whack ass reparations offer in California. We'll definitely be getting into that as well. So we'll start here in Maryland with the latest because Dr. Wimbush and some others I have had the pleasure of crossing paths with, both professionally and once upon a time from undergrad in Western Maryland, Frostburg State University, where again from 1997 to 1999, Mama's Biscuits ruled as the greatest funk band in Western Maryland. But so I got alma mater crew on there. I got Morgan State crew on there. A lot of people I've had. No, Ear Doctor's not on vacation. He just doesn't work on Mondays. Mondays was never an agreed upon time for the Remix Morning Show. We pushed it. We pushed to Friday, and I'm holding on to Monday. Because what better way to start a Monday than here? You know what I mean? Start a work week than here. So okay, but as I said, there are a number of things that I did want to get to, and looking at my run sheet, I already messed up. I had a whole plan for the intro and set it up and everything and messed it up. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and recover. Well, I'll save that for when I'm going to take a little break myself, because now that I messed it up, I'll just save it and come back to it. So one thing I thought where we could start, there's no particular order today. Got a couple of things to get to, and then of course we can always check in with the chat. But there is some breaking news, importantly, regarding Syria that we're going to get to a little bit this morning. I've read an interesting Hood Communist piece that we're going to talk about, connecting the Sahel to Cuba. We're going to talk a little bit about where, oddly, I find myself in agreement with MSNBC. So I'm definitely going to need the chat to check me on that. My liberalism might be kicking in on some level, I guess. I don't know, because I've watched the segment that was sent to me and I said, damn it. But so we'll have to see about that. We're going to come back and talk a little bit more about Ronnie Reagan. I just did a review of this recently released horrible film. And the links to all of this will end up in the show description. So if you're seeing this not live later on, you will already have all the links. Those who are live here shortly after we wrap, you can refresh to get the links that I'll put in. But I found something new related to Ronnie Reagan. not really new, but a new depiction, I should say, I guess. So we'll get or a new a contemporary rendition of something old. So we're going to get to that a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about the OG of the financial literacy hustle, and a little gem about buying power and advertising that I found the other, well, actually early this morning. Uh, Big pun. I think David Silberg sent me a review of Soundtrack to a Coup that is good, but I think the review. No, I was about to say I think the review I did was a little bit better. No, I'm just playing. Actually, I'm not playing. I'm not playing, but it was good. So we're going to get to that. Talk a little bit about Uruguay as well, and an AI takeover of social media. But to start, we're going to. I want to go back to what is. Where did this first? Oh, first of all, shout out to Renee. While I'm getting this story here together. So, ooh, Leah, so you saw it. Nice. Okay, good, good, good. I hope you have some notes ready, and when I get to that section on soundtrack to a coup d'etat, you can chime in via chat, or if you want, I'll drop the link. You can join me up here. But soundtrack to a coup d'etat must be seen. We have to encourage that it be seen, and if you are, or if you have the ability at some point to see it, even if you are somewhat inconvenienced having to track it down, please do it. It'll be worth your time. What bill did Chitty Matcha mention? I didn't see everything because I do eventually have to step away from the chat. No, we're here live. We're here live. We're here live. Yes, Mama's Biscuits. I'm trying to tell you. Trying to tell you. What bill? Where did she? What bill did Chitty Matcha mention? But if it's related to, I don't know if I did. What was it? I don't think I did. Oh Lord, no. Crucial Communism Teaching Act. What? No. Let's see here. I mean, might as well pull this up right now. Hold on, let's see. So, education in the workforce, to help families, civic institutions, local communities, local educational agencies, high schools, and state educational agencies to prepare high school students to be civically responsible, knowledgeable adults, understand the dangers of communism and similar political ideologies. So I thought, so again, small government Republicans want to use big government to make sure that other forms of government can't be taught. And how much more do they need to do? There's no pro-communism or any real discussion of communism in schools. Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation. Includes a comparative discussion of certain political ideologies. I wish they would. That's a lie. They're not. That's a lie. They're not gonna. They don't want to get into some comparative education between these systems, including communism and totalitarianism. But what about capitalism? When do American children get taught capitalism, by the way? Just to quickly throw that out there. When does that happen? Ongoing human rights abuses against the Uyghurs, right? Because this country cares so much about. Okay, so we get some more anti-China. So that they can accurately promote an understanding of such political ideologies, develop oral history resources that may be used alongside the curriculum described in the paragraph one, include personal stories titled Portraits in Patriotism from diverse individuals, democratic, civic-minded qualities, who are victims of political ideologies and who compare to the political ideologies described in paragraph. Wow. Wow. Yeah, I don't even so on the one hand, exactly, that they care about US Muslims all of a sudden. Uh and that they care about the spread of democracy. That's wild. Um, again, on the one hand, having just almost finishing up having two children go through the US public education system and in what is often touted in this country is one of the best countries, one of the best counties in which to do that. Although also reminding that while Howard County, Maryland schools are considered public schools are considered some of the best academically, they are also considered some of the most segregated within the school system in the country. So, uh, but um, having seen no similar bill looking to address the racial and class segregation that occurs within these schools, public schools, internally. Like once all these, if you stand outside and you watch these streams of diverse people going into the building, you might think one thing. But if you actually go into the classrooms, once everybody's in the building, it starts to look like 1950 all over again. And and I don't see a bill yet addressing that concern, but nobody in there is coming out with some well-rounded education about communism, good or bad, and then again to my point about capitalism either. But as has been said, this country's unofficial religion, I think I'm getting this from Abby Martin, is a hatred of communism. So, which is again why fundamentally, even back to my childhood, my mother's influence notwithstanding, start to say, well, it must not be that bad. They hate it this much. Must be something right. Again, admittedly, not the best methodology to use, maybe not the ending methodology we should engage, but all right. Wow. Thank you, Chitty Matcha. Thank you to the chat uh for that one. All right. So, I started to say, so shout out to Renee. I know we talk about the remixers of the undefeated chat. Her spreadsheet research is undefeated. Uh so again, links all be in the show description. I did a little look at marketing the Messiah on uh my show the other day. And Renee off record just went and added to the depth of what is to be learned about Dr. Venus Opal Reese, who was the subject of that discussion. And please go check it out. And I don't know. I might have to come back and revisit like a part two, because it's even worse than what I had discovered. And but suffice it to say, at least for now, that the problem is when you pull on the thread of Black capitalism and its logic, all of the clothing just falls away. Pun intended. But I'm gonna leave that as a little cliffhanger. Mm. All right. Let me get back on my little run sheet here. I wanted to start, but somewhere I can't remember where I was or where we were having this discussion, but I think it was on the remix the other day. But the idea that there is a concern among some in this country that um, the response to the killing of the CEO last week is generating, as it says here, an obstacle of sympathy for the gunman. The manhunt for the United Healthcare CEO killer meets unexpected obstacle, sympathy for the gunman. And what I thought was fascinating about this Wall Street Journal article, which is of course lamenting this reality, um, is that what it appears to be, and I didn't extensively research this point, but it seems to be that outlets like the Wall Street Journal and other commercial media are reflecting their class biases by, again, sort of lamenting in a way what the people's response is, without really considering appropriately why people would be responding this way. The short of it with this story is that from people's posts online, in social media, to the world of the unofficial cyber sleuth community, people are saying, we're not looking for this guy, and I hope he gets away. I don't encourage violence. I don't have to condone violence by any means, but I also don't have to help, wrote at that Danish guy. Danish guy? Is that what that's meant to say? Who has 2 million followers on TikTok, where he bills himself as capable of finding anybody. Former Boston Police Commissioner Ed Davis said, I've been watching and I've been shocked. It's troubling to see it. And I'm really surprised that people are reacting that way, considering the tragic loss here and the violence of what happened. The sympathy is being described here as a huge problem, and then they're connecting it to the case of Eric Rudolph, which this actually this I thought was a telling, and this to me, obvious. This was the part that for me revealed more than anything that the article says the bias of the Wall Street Journal, which is here. And I don't know if folks remember this case of Eric Rudolph, the Atlanta Olympic bomber, who not only bombed the Atlanta Olympics, but then escaped under the protection of this underground white supremacist network in this country, and was able to live uh, relatively free. I don't think he was living well. It was a lot of hiding and this, that, and the third, but for I forget how long, but for quite a while before they caught him. And here he's the one this is the story that the assassin of the CEO was being connected to, as if to say anyone who does this should be considered akin to a white supremacist terrorist. And I don't equate a white supremacist bombing the Atlanta Olympics and why they were doing that, or the movement that protected him, with what seems to be the motive for the killing of the CEO, and whatever sentiment is being lamented here that wants to protect him. I don't think it's a fair equivalence that they would do that, but yet they do. But anyway, so the point is that I thought this part was, and I'm not really sure if this was the intent of the creator here, if this was an attempt to, I assume this was, what is it? An ironic reference to Atlas Shrugged and what's her name? I'm just escaped. The name just escaped me. The author. But the point of Atlas Shrugged was, let corporations take over. We don't need government. Ayn Rand, right? And so here's somebody saying everyone shrugged, like, and it's like, oh well, dude got killed. Oh well. Yeah, I feel someone out there has the story, definitely has seen this story and definitely knows who it is. The world collectively shrugged. That seems to be the general response. Said of Michael McWhorter of 6.7 million followers on TikTok. So I thought that was interesting, that the Wall Street Journal is saying, hey, we, now. Then I also saw this, and I'm going to have us watch a few minutes of this here, because this is actually a pretty funny, similar discussion featuring comedian Bill Burr, who was on a podcast the other day, and extends the discussion of what we saw there a little bit in the Wall Street Journal. So I just want to play a few minutes of this, and again, the link to the full video will be in the show description.
Unmasked and smiling, police released new photos of a person of interest seen at a New York hostel where they believe the suspected gunman. In this disturbing video, a masked man takes aim, shooting.
Oh, what's going on in New York? We were just talking about it. That CEO got fucking whacked.
Oh my God, dude.
You know what's funny? I was sitting there reading an article, guy. They go, "Oh my God, he's such a great guy. He had a wife and kids, and he's such a great guy." And then you find out he and the other guys he's working for are getting sued for $121 million for dumping a stock and not letting the other people know.
In the lawsuit, he and multiple other United Health executives are accused of offloading something like 15 million shares of stock.
It's like, there's your
message. Dude, anytime I hear CEO of one of the biggest healthcare, it's like, you don't wish it on anybody. You feel horrible for his kids and his wife, of course. But dude, when I saw that, and I saw
what is more heartless than a fucking CEO of a corporation? The decision in healthcare, the decisions that they make. This is the thing. I'm not saying what happened should have happened, but I'm just, for them to be like, oh, this is like, why would anybody want to do this?
The NYPD says it doesn't have a clear motive for the shooting.
Police are looking not just for the suspect, but a motive.
Police do not really know what the motive could be.
It's like they're denying claims and people are dying. The food supply is poison. It's like the fucking motive out there is wild. It's right up there, Paul, with getting life insurance. The second you get life insurance, whoever is the beneficiary immediately has motive.
My wife took one look at my will and realized that I'm worth more to her dead than alive. In my house, I don't eat anything unless I break the seal myself.
You are now worth such and such amount of money if you're not alive. And there you are talking.
Yeah. That's the first time in my lifetime where I saw surveillance of something that was like a fucking movie, where the guy just stood out holding the gun, silencer hat, shot him and just went off. That was fucking wild to see. My buddy who's a cop was like, did you see the surveillance? And when I saw him step out, I was like, is this real? That was nuts, dude.
That was so funny. Is this real? Paul, are you watching the world? What about fucking Vladimir Putin? He's over there. He's got like Musk. You fucking put the cologne on and all of a sudden you start breaking out and like 3 days later you're dead. fucking brutal. I thought the most disturbing thing about it was that they had camera surveillance of the guy from there all the way up to Central Park. It's like, what sort of Big Brother city is that?
Yeah. And and then they got him in a bank now. And they were like, dude, that's not the same fucking guy. Like, different jacket, different. I don't think they know.
They got to get him a cup of coffee. Well, this is the thing, Paul. They did. The thing about those murders is if there's no fucking connection to you and the victim, you've never met, you've never spoken, you have no priors or anything like that, you're in the wind. Like, I don't know how the fuck you would get that. He's covered up like this. I don't know. It's you know what's fucked up, Paul, is I've been doing a bit in my act talking about how it was better when the mob was running shit because they were regulated simply because what they were doing was illegal. And I know that they were making a bunch of money, but they couldn't be flashing around. They had wars. They whacked each other and shit. And I was saying, like, how fucking great would it be to see, like, you know, the head of fucking, you know, Walmart gets whacked by the head of the fucking Target guy, have a nice old-fashioned fucking war and just thin the herd and keep everybody honest. But the problem is those guys are all on the legal side of stealing. And all of those politicians, they give the politicians the heads up and then they turn around, they make all these fucking money. Andrew, what the fuck were you saying? Nancy Pelosi just made $9 million on some shit?
Nancy Pelosi's stock trades saw a 65% return last year. This comes as Congress has stalled talks on banning lawmakers from trading stocks.
They're gangsters, dude. Fucking gangsters. And then when one of them gets whacked or something, they're like, oh, good, he was such a good guy. It's a dirty game, Paul. Healthcare, dirty game.
It's a dirty game. I tweeted last night. I go, the CEO of Aetna called a meeting today. They're going to relook at some of those claims they denied. Jesus, dude. Yeah, but so I heard an ex-military guy go, because two ex-military guys talked, and then John Walsh from America's Most Wanted to talk. John Walsh doesn't think it was a professional. This ex-military guy said the way he was standing and the way he held his gun was definitely some training involved. But the weird thing was, knowing the guy was going to be there at 6 a.m. in the morning, they said the dude knew he'd be there, and the dude was there for hours.
But here's my question, Paul. Why is there this level of coverage? Somebody gets gunned down in New York every fucking day. Now, all of a sudden, all these experts have to weigh in.
Yeah.
That's because of the status. We can't have white guys in suits getting whacked. Like, we got to find this fucking guy. Do that. Like, that thing right there, dude. That fucking right there. That sent a ripple shockwave. Dude, Bill Clinton fucking got up from Epstein Island and said, what happened?
I think he said, I think the record shows.
No. I'm saying, like, those people are all talking about it under their mountain or whatever. That fucking thing, dude. They don't give a fuck. Paul, if you came up and you whacked me because I fucking took your fucking whatever, your picks for the week, that's fucking page 19 of the Post. You start whacking a fucking CEO when a white guy in a suit can't walk into a 5-star fucking hotel without getting shot by a silencer. Yeah, they get nervous.
Yeah.
Message. Again, it goes on for some time, but I'll provide the link. But I think that said a lot right there. So, but again, the just to connect those two dots is that I don't the mainstream narrative cannot include any serious consideration for why people would be that upset. And I think the Wall Street Journal approach is perfect, that we're going to acknowledge that some of you feel this way, but we're going to quickly associate this with terrorism to do the best that we can to stem the tide of this sentiment, which they're on the legal side of crime. And you can't, once rich white men start becoming the target, there's going to be a whole different level of response. There was one other connection that I found because that I wanted to share, and of course relate back to my own work and claims and inability to say I told you so, which is ultimately what's most important here. Let's just be honest. Is that if you go back and look at this book that is getting some new attention, Delay, Deny, Defend: Why Insurance Companies Don't Pay Claims and What You Can Do About It, which has been associated with the motive. Chapter 4, and this was written in 2008, chapter 4 brings it back to something that for me become oh, and no, Tia, let's be clear. That was me quoting Bill Burr. So as we want to highlight the accuracy of that point, it's not mine. That was Bill Burr's line. But chapter 4 of this book focuses on McKinsey and Company and their role in, as it says here, redefining the game and making claims a profit center. And long story short, this chapter outlines the history of how McKinsey, doing what it's been here to do for 100 and some years, helped reorganize major insurance companies so that they could, of course, maximize profit, which of course means paying as little out in claims as possible. And that while it's bad now, apparently it was not always, in other words, it's never been great in terms of healthcare and private insurance involvement, but apparently in going into the 1980s and 90s, it wasn't as bad as it is now. But McKinsey got involved and wrote a white paper called Factory and Firm: The Future of Claims Handling, and helped move major insurance companies to understand that substantial economic improvement resulted as claims process became a profit center for the company. The focus of the claims process was no longer on paying a fair amount promptly, but on paying or not paying in amounts at times and under conditions that increase the company's profits. So not in amounts at times and under conditions that increase the likelihood of a patient receiving the medical care that they need and surviving, but in a way that maximized profits. And of course, the founder, as I was reminded here, James McKinsey, was, studied at the font of neoliberal, neo-colonial economics, the University of Chicago. McKinsey claims to have served 147 of the world's 200 largest corporations, and its services come dear. Annual fees routinely cost $10 million, with its largest clients paying $50 million a year or more to get this kind of good advice that helps you reorganize yourself so that you can not pay anybody and make as much money as possible, creating the situation that we're in today. And again, my selfish reminder here is that this is the group now, McKinsey and Company, that has increasingly involved itself in the popular discussion of of Black buying power, of Black economics, of Black representation in media, of how companies should address themselves to Black consumers, and providing yet another false source for this false, misunderstood notion of buying power to Black media outlets. And again, this is one of the leaders in that discussion space of Black economics is McKinsey, whose goal is to squeeze as much profit out for the corporate world, who's paying them exorbitant fees to help them maximize profit. And what they share here is part of the slickness of how all of this is meant to work. McKinsey identified the core issues in descending levels of generality, and this is to help Allstate. This is the example from Allstate that they began in the 1980s, and State Farm, and some of the bigger names that we all recognize. The overall core process redesign objectives were: build customer-focused organization with service levels equal to or better than that of our competition, redesign activities and core processes to significantly improve Allstate's competitive economics over the intermediate and longer time period, develop a home office and field organization structure that yields competitive advantage, becoming a low-cost, broadly based insurer for the selected level of service by customer segment. At this level of generality, the objectives seem unobjectionable and even laudable. A major company should strive to provide service equal to or better than that of our competition. At least one court that looked at some of McKinsey documents and Allstate's manuals that drew on them concluded, quote, that unless read in a way to give meanings to words that are rather far-fetched and improbable, they lacked a, quote, sinister nature. As McKinsey developed its hypothesis in more detail and implemented the redesign, its effects became more apparent. Again, the point here is, despite the claims of the positive language in the wording, and as that judge noted, hey, it sounds great. What they're doing is saying they want to develop these close relationships so that they can better manipulate and know how not to pay people. So that, for instance, when they tell claimants or discourage claimants from being helped by lawyers as a way of expediting the process, they can also pay them less when they don't have lawyers to help. Because, quote, the way we approach claimants and develop relationships will significantly alter representation rates and contribute to lower severities. In short, has summarized at a claim management conference in the spring of 1994, we will win the economics game. Winning will be a zero-sum game. And to do so, they're going to win by being consistent with consistent execution of better plays and new game plans, change the rules and play a new game. It's step 2. And then as as Allstate's CEO said, in the long run, if we don't win on the claim side of the business, we don't win, because that's where all the leverage is. 3/4 of every dollar that leaves the company goes to pay claims. So we have to build a long-term sustainable competitive advantage in claims. It's that simple. And the way to do that is to build this sort of false relationship that can cajole people into a false sense of security, and to take steps like not getting a lawyer that will not help them, or that will help the company not pay them out. And then, as it says here, they determined that 12% of the claims, that there's a 12% claims payment shortfall, and we are able to reduce the shortfall to 10%. We have recovered the $2 billion savings in expense. So I noted this because if they're saying if they only pay out 12% of the claims, and if they could get it down to 10%, they save $2 billion in just that 2% difference. It gives an idea of the amount of money that they're generating here and looking to keep away from everybody else. Traditionally, companies would pay what they should pay. Was this a typo in there? Traditionally, companies pay what they should pay with should. Wait, how was the sentence written here? Traditionally, companies would pay what they should pay with should defined by what the policyholder was owed. Traditionally, companies would pay what they should pay, or they defined should with what the policyholder was owed. Transforming claims into a profit center would require focusing on leakage or paying more than should be paid, where should, quote unquote, was measured by the goal of reducing costs and increasing profits. The solution was to reduce payments to policyholders and other claimants. The solution would be implemented by redefining the every step of the claims process and creating a new systematic claims process across auto and home owners' claims. All right. Oh, I just wanted to show the cover. So maybe not the best written sentence, but the point is well established and supported, that the goal is to pay out as little as possible. And McKinsey is now more and more involved. Yeah, you need a lawyer for that sentence. That was a rough, yeah, it's just a poorly written sentence. It's all right. I've, again, written more than my fair share. But the point remains that, so that was it. So I just found that connection fascinating, that again, the very entities that want to convince Black people, actually, I don't know that I don't want to put that goal on them. Their goal is to help companies maximize profits by exploiting any opportunity to do so. And if producing if attaching themselves to the tradition of producing reports around Black and other buying power helps them do that, they will. So I don't want to claim that their intent is to disturb the political consciousness of Black communities. The result is a disturbance of the political consciousness of Black communities, who end up, through the misrepresentation of McKinsey and other styled reports that claim Black people have buying power, make similar claims and then make incorrect claims about what that means and what can be done about it. And we should just be reminded that this is who they are. That's where that stuff is coming from. It's coming from people that are just looking to help companies. And in the case of buying power, advertising, marketing companies, agencies, and their clients. That's they're not looking to help Black people. All right. So before we leave this topic entirely, I mentioned that I did this review of this new film about Ronald Reagan and all of it gets it gets wrong, and I'll put the link to in the show description. But I found something related to this issue of health insurance and Reagan that I thought I would share here. And again, the link will be in the show description. The person in question here is talking in the context of having lost their mother due to actually, he clarifies, he doesn't directly blame the insurance company for his mother's death. He says that her cancer had moved to a certain stage quickly enough that it wouldn't have been survivable. But he does note that the care that would have helped her, eased her end of life and all of that, had been denied by one of these major healthcare companies. And so in sort of pursuing some of that history, he brings up a number of interesting points, including this one here. So I thought we would just check this part out at least.
As we know it today, in 1986, the amount the United States spends on healthcare has more than quadrupled. Medicare Advantage and much of our modern healthcare problems exist because of not one, but two versions of Ronald Reagan. In the late 1950s, a fully government-funded healthcare plan for the elderly was actually a possibility. Congress saw two bills that put forth plans for national insurance programs for everyone receiving Social Security, the elderly, in exchange for a small increase to Social Security payments. Early versions of the bill saw the plan as mandatory, but an alliance between private insurers, the American Medical Association, and others who profited off the existing system, which was already predatory, did not want to see that happen. So they released a secret weapon, Operation Coffee Cup. A key element of the campaign was this vinyl record. The AMA drafted who was then just a young actor to record Ronald Reagan speaks out against socialized medicine. The record was sent out to doctors' wives, it was 1961, okay, to play for their friends to convince them not to support the healthcare bills, like a Tupperware party for predatory privatized medicine. The record attacked the plans for being controlling.
And pretty soon, your son won't decide when he's in school where he will go or what he will do for a living. He will wait for the government to tell him where he will go to work and what he will do.
And implored the wives to contact their congressmen to fight the bill.
If you don't, this program, I promise you, will pass just as surely as the sun will come up tomorrow. And behind it will come other federal programs that will invade every area of freedom as we have known it in this country. Until one day, as Norman Thomas said, we will awake to find that we have socialism.
Reagan mocked advocates of the bill.
They say, what would you do? Throw these poor old people out to die with no medical attention? That's ridiculous, and of course, no one has advocated it.
I don't know, Ronnie. That sounds a lot like what happened to my mom. A version of the healthcare bills did pass, creating something similar to the Medicare we have today, but with an important change. It wasn't mandatory. That left a lot of power with private insurers. Then, as president, Reagan signed the Tax Equity and Fiscal Responsibility Act, which made a few changes to that existing Medicare program. Importantly, it made it legal for Medicare to contract with private insurance companies. So in the 60s, actor Reagan gave the industry the gift of making Medicare optional. And then in the 80s, President Reagan gave them access to even the folks who were on the government plan. That bill allowed for the creation of Medicare Part C, which eventually became Medicare Advantage in 1996. Since then, we see a lot of the same arguments about why privatized insurance and healthcare is better than public. They said a government plan would be more expensive. They said it would destroy choice and give worse quality of care. And they dropped what was the scariest word of that century: communism. Universal healthcare would be using your tax dollars to support other people, they warned. Medicare Advantage, specifically, shows why each of those arguments is total bullshit.
So obviously, the link will be in the show description. The entire video is very good, and yeah, again, something very similar and close to it happened with my mother. Is happening now with my mother. And were we not of a certain class with a certain relative means, she would have been out in the street or just already dead by now. I don't think she could have survived. So yeah, so Reagan, who again died during my wedding, helped create the narrative that helps justify the policy. So, yeah, thought that piece was interesting as well, especially as in light of that Wall Street Journal article, considering how people feel about the assassination of a CEO. All right. Let me do a version of an ear doctor. Let's take a quick break because my homeboy put out a new album. I'll make sure the link is in the show description as well. I bought my copy and thought we would check out this track Maroon Pack from Marcel P. Black off his new album. What is the title of the new album? Is the title is not Maroon Pack? Is it The Hardest Color? Or is Maroon Pack the name of the album? Anyway, when you get the link in the show description and get it, you'll be more clear than I am. But in the meantime, back in a quick second here on I Mix What I Like.
Yes, indeed, your boy Marcel P. Black from Baton Rouge to North Carolina, the Tulsa and back. I got my OG Saints all Comanche. Talk to him,
Let me
OG.
tell you that you never hear me spitting a lie. Crooks heart, wishing the past, skip the class, handing out parts. Suckers start wanting everything fast. Millimeter minds, Jackie O'Nash frail. Delicate spies walk around with tuck tails. Following fad, you ducktails. And Cesar, sure ain't your launch pad. Want my rain, it's so bad, but that's when my back's turned. When I'm around, cool as the Fonz. Muster up a response, but it's a done deal. Free name, reception you get cold as Green Bay. State in Wisconsin, very teenage. But you begin to raise the white flag. Locked within criminal fun, just a desperate attempt. Trying to generate your bag. And living like a pathetic simp. But tons pressing on the dome, a do-rag. So lay down, we ain't stunting nothing you say. Get out the way, on the real.
All these fake niggas know the deal. When they start the revolution, all they gonna do is squeal. On the real, all these fake niggas know the deal. When we start the revolution, all they gonna do is squeal. On the real, all these fake niggas know the deal. When they start the revolution, all they gonna do is squeal. On the real, all these fake niggas know the deal. When we start the revolution, all they gonna do is squeal. Underrated in the underground. Over vocal rappers shook when I come around. MCs come correct, standing next to me. They know my reputation, heard about my pedigree. My spit hits like King Griffey, my pen's wicked. I've been the business, show close and give me the mic. Bottom of ninth inning, always bet on black. Just know they imps winning, put your ends on it and city you win digits. Grizzly with the skinny niggas die, I transcend limits. 6'4", 435, you niggas 10 midgets. And I know that I need to lose weight, but it's hard to slim down with all these rappers on my plate. I don't care about opinions if it ain't from a great. And anybody lesser, I'm considering it hate. Whack rapper, backstabber, bitch, I told you out the gate. Black superhero, pull a horse up on my gate. Nigga, real. All these fake niggas know the deal. When they start the revolution, all they gonna do is squeal. On the real, all these fake niggas know the deal. When we start the revolution, all they gonna do is squeal. On the real, all these fake niggas know the deal.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I
like. All these fake niggas know the deal. When we start the revolution.
Yeah, salute to Marcel P. Black. Welcome back to our Mix What I Like right here in Black Liberation Media. Please do like, share, subscribe, support the Patreon. New stuff dropping. blackliberationmedia.org. Links are all in the show description. And yeah, Skip Coon's new album. Is amazing. It's amazing. But I'm also digging Marcel's new album. Started going through it early this morning. So yeah, some folks still doing it and doing it well. But okay, all right. Let's see. Got a couple other things to get into here. And again, of course, I'll be back at 12 o'clock with Dr. Ray Winbush talking about reparations, starting here in Maryland. But what does that mean nationally and beyond? So please come on back for that. And make sure you have the bell rung so you don't miss anything that comes out. All right, so a couple other things have are popping off around the world that I thought we could check out a little bit, including what many woke up to this morning and over the weekend is the removal of Assad in Syria. So this is from Reuters. Oh, this is a commercial, I believe. Okay, yeah, here we go.
Syria's former president Bashar al-Assad has fled to Moscow with his family after Russia granted them asylum on humanitarian grounds. Russian news agencies confirmed his arrival to the capital on Sunday after speaking to a Kremlin source. The source added that a deal had been done with Syrian opposition leaders to ensure the safety of Russian military bases in Syria, including Russia's only repair and replenishment hub on the Mediterranean Sea. However, some Russian war bloggers said the situation around the bases was extremely tense, and the source did not say how long the security guarantee lasted. It all began hours earlier on Sunday when rebel fighters raced into Damascus unopposed. ending nearly 6 decades of the Assad family's iron-fisted rule after a lightning advance that reversed the course of a 13-year civil war that has killed hundreds of thousands and displaced millions. The fall of Assad's government is a major blow to the influence of Russia and Iran in the region and marks one of the biggest turning points in the Middle East for generations. Top rebel commander Abu Muhammad al-Golani spoke to a large crowd in central Damascus after rebels swept through the city and announced Assad's ouster.
Within 11 days, by God's grace, Syria was liberated from its north to its south and from its east to its west. This is God's support. Thanks to God, we have witnessed with our own eyes how 13 years of suffering are being healed through this great victory.
Russia's foreign ministry said Sunday that Assad had left the country after giving orders for a peaceful handover of power. Russia's ambassador to international organizations in Vienna, Mikhail Ulyanov, later said on his Telegram channel that Moscow had given asylum to Assad and his family. Jubilant supporters of the revolt crowded Syrian embassies around the world. Assad's fall could allow millions of refugees scattered for more than a decade in camps across Turkey, Lebanon, and Jordan to finally return home. But many questions about Syria's future remain. When the celebrations fade, the country's new leaders face the daunting task of trying to deliver stability to a diverse country that will need billions of dollars in aid.
All right, so with that sort of general story breaking, one thing I wanted to make sure to do was to check in with the work of Ben Norton, who I'm sure is working on an update. But a couple of days ago, he posted this story, which covers a lot of, and again, all the links will be in the show description, which covers a lot of what is happening now, but from a more appropriate frame. I'll just play a couple of minutes here, and then it's a well broken up 30+ minute video essay. Obviously, we're not going to play the whole thing, but just a couple minutes here, just to get a more appropriate frame begun, and then I'll show you a couple of things that he points to throughout the rest of the video.
War on Syria has gone on for more than a decade, and yet it continues to drag on. Yeah, this is not just a civil war, which it's often mistakenly referred to as. Rather, this is an international war that has been fueled by multiple foreign countries from the very beginning, especially the United States and Israel. After violent protests broke out in Syria in 2011, the CIA began flooding the country with weapons and spending around $1 billion every single year arming and training so-called rebels to try to overthrow the Syrian government. And many of these rebels were linked to Al-Qaeda and ISIS. The Washington Post reported that the CIA program at $1 billion per year accounted for $1 out of every $15 in the CIA's overall budget, aimed at trying to destabilize Syria. The New York Times reported that this covert CIA program, known as Operation Timber Sycamore, was one of the largest CIA operations since the CIA Operation Cyclone in the 1980s in Afghanistan, in which the U.S. spy agency armed and trained Islamist extremists to try to fight against the socialist government in Afghanistan, which was supported by the Soviet Union. That war in the 1980s, in which the CIA funded and armed the Mujahideen, gave birth to Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. So these covert CIA initiatives, Operation Cyclone in Afghanistan in the 1980s and Operation Timber Sycamore in Syria in the 2010s, these were very similar operations in which the US government spent billions of dollars arming and training extremist Islamist groups trying to violently overthrow an independent secular government allied with Russia. There are very clear historical parallels. But the war in Syria is still not over. In 2016, the Syrian government was able to retake the city of Aleppo, which is the second biggest city in the country. It had previously been held by extremist groups allied with Al-Qaeda, and many of those groups fled to the west, to the northwestern Idlib province. And since 2016, Idlib has been governed by rebranded Al-Qaeda. The main so-called rebel group in the region is called Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, which is the rebranded Al-Qaeda affiliate in Syria. And in late November 2024, HTS, this rebranded Al-Qaeda group, led an armed attack on Aleppo, the second biggest city in Syria after the capital Damascus. And these extremist groups took over Aleppo. Now, if you don't know much about the war in Syria and you only read Western media outlets, you'd probably be quite confused because Western media outlets refer to this group that took over Syria as rebels. They don't actually explain what HTS is. However, ironically, this armed group that is being cheered on in the Western media as rebels seeking freedom in Syria, this group, HTS, is officially recognized by the US government as a terrorist organization. The US government's National Counterterrorism Center has a website that provides information about these foreign terrorist organizations, and it notes that HTS evolved from Jabhat al-Nusra, or Nusra Front, which is Al-Qaeda's former branch in Syria. This was the largest branch of Al-Qaeda in world history, which had its base of operations in Syria and had gotten billions of dollars of weapons from the United States and its allies in the region. And in 2018, the US State Department added HTS to the Nusra Front's existing 2012 terrorist designation because, again, HTS is simply rebranded Al-Qaeda. They obviously could see that associating directly formally with Al-Qaeda was a bad look. So in order to try to win more international support, they said, oh, we're breaking ties formally with Al-Qaeda. But HTS still shares the same exact fascist ideology, genocidal ideology of Al-Qaeda. And the fact of the matter is that the US government has been allied with Al-Qaeda in Syria for more than 1 decade. If you don't believe me, listen to the current US National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan. Back during the Obama administration, Jake Sullivan was an aide to the US Secretary of State at the time, Hillary Clinton. And thanks to WikiLeaks, which published Hillary Clinton's emails, we have a 2012 email that Jake Sullivan sent to his boss, the Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, in which he said, quote, AQ is on our side in Syria, end quote. AQ is, of course, Al-Qaeda. So this is the top aide to Hillary Clinton, US Secretary of State, in 2012, admitting in an email published by the US State Department that, quote, Al-Qaeda is on our side in Syria. So this has been going on for a decade. It's not a secret that the US and Al-Qaeda have been on the same side against the Syrian government.
Oh my goodness. And the rest of this essay is excellent and includes reminders of Biden repeatedly saying, even before his most recent intellectual decline, that so first Norton goes on to explain that this new HTS group, this Al-Qaeda rebranded group, has openly praised the US and Israel and promised to be friends with Israel. So that's another part of this video essay that becomes important. And then we're reminded how Biden had said repeatedly before his most recent decline that if Israel didn't exist, we would have to invent it. With Netanyahu, Norton reminds us, being an American citizen who grew up here, went to school here, and who has openly recognized Israel as a military outpost and an aircraft carrier in service of the US military. So the goal, as Ben Norton points to, is to destabilize a potentially anti-colonial front in that region of the world that would stand against Israel and US Western interests in that region. And that's why they're willing to support anyone who's willing to participate in that destabilization, but in service of Israel and the United States. So I highly encourage people to check out the rest of that video and really all of a lot of Ben's work, beyond that. So things are looking up. Things are looking up for sure. For sure. That's just so wild, though. And shout out to WikiLeaks for that as well. All right. Speaking of world events, this one, when I saw this, I became very this was just exciting to see. So this is from recent hood communist delegation from the Sahel visits Cuba for revolutionary change by Inem Richardson, or Inem, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing. From November 8th to the 15th, 12 people from the countries of the Sahel visited Cuba to meet with Cuban people who carry forward the revolutionary project and learn about Cuba's socialist model and deep friendship with the peoples of Africa. The delegation sought to learn lessons from Cuba's decades-long revolution to help advance the new revolutions being constructed in the Sahel. Cuban guides and museum directors explain that African history is deeply embedded into Cuba's educational system and that Cubans, despite having different skin colors, share a national identity tied to their African heritage. One of the exchanges that left the greatest mark on the AES visitors was a meeting with Dr. Aledita Guevara, the daughter of Ernesto Che Guevara, and Commander Victor Jadeke, who was military leader in the early struggles of the Cuban Revolution, as well as in Congo and Guinea-Bissau. President Ibrahim Traore has adopted Thomas Sankara's statement, "The homeland or death, we will succeed," and it's part of their national anthem. And then just closing, Thomas Sankara, Modibo Keita, and other leaders from the Sahel have understood the necessity to build socialism as a fundamental part of the struggle for national liberation, sovereignty, and self-determination. The Malian, Burkinabe, and Nigerian travelers to Cuba feel an even stronger push to fight for socialism after seeing the progress of Africa's sister revolution in Cuba. So again, I'll link that in the show description so people can read and share that story and be inspired by that. It was great for me to see that. I had not caught that initially, that visit took place, and continued strength. Good luck. I love it. Yeah. So salute to that whole endeavor, and salute to Cuba and the ongoing struggle that they represent. You know what? That was dope. When I first read that story, I was literally just kind of grinning the whole time. It was just dope. Oh, word. Pretty soon, Northern militias and the AES will be talking about freeing the region. That's what's up. And when we get to soundtrack to a coup d'etat again, boy, talk about inspiration, boy. That's what they were on. And that's why I said when I did my little, first reaction to the documentary, I hope there's no artists currently signing up to take a trip to West Africa. Please be aware, please beware of even well-meaning artists from the US or the West traveling to West Africa to do shows on the dime of the State Department. In fact, I already kind of messed up I messed up again on my run sheet. I had this laid out. I thought I was about to be slick. See, that's what happens. But since I brought it up, I'll come back to this other thing. Let's just stick to that theme. I believe, again, Big Pun sent me this. Covert Action Magazine did a review of Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat. It is so good that it may redefine the documentary as a means of mass communication. Good God!
Now listen, that's called my boy. You know nothing about that.
Because that's a fact. Actually, I honestly don't know. And unfortunately, one of my light criticisms of this review is that I don't think enough is said in it about what it means that they would do that, that the documentary would be redefined as a means of mass communication. But I just like the way it sounds. And I like the documentary so much that I'm with it. So I'm just gonna accept that. And yeah. So pictured here in the middle here is Andre Bluin, who we are going to please make sure you are liking and sharing and make sure you are subscribed. Please also, of course, here, Black Liberation Media, but please also to I Mix What I Like, because there's going to be some more on this coming to these spaces specific to Sister Bluin here. The broader audience has reached out. I love our audience community has reached out and said, Jared, I heard you talking, praising her. We got research. We got more we can help provide on this sister and her work. She was, among many other things, the speechwriter for Lumumba. And we see some of her story depicted in the documentary. Soundtrack to a coup d'etat, and that's her in so by Johan Grimond Prez. Just a couple of things from here. Since the United Nations plays a central to the story, the author of this review, sorry for skipping, Ed Rampell, does a quick reminder of what the United Nations is and how it has been seen by various from various perspectives in since its foundation in World War II, reminding us that John Bolton, while working for George Bush as UN ambassador, U.S. ambassador to the UN, that it wouldn't make a bit of difference if the top 10 floors of the United Nations vanished from the 39-story headquarters building, meaning that it just needs to be turned into more of a mechanism for the West. And let's get rid of any sort of red tape that would block that process. Not only did that 1/4 of the UN headquarters contain the Secretary General's office, but as I recall from my 1980s stints reporting from that building on Manhattan's East Side, it also included the quarters for those overseeing the emergence of Namibia and South African rule. Those who dismiss the UN as irrelevant blithely ignore the role that body has played in eradicating diseases, humanitarian aid, especially during acute crises, and in ending what Frantz Fanon had dubbed in a book title, A Dying Colonialism. So this confused me a little bit because it seems like the author here is wanting us to praise the United Nations or at least be reminded of what good it has done. And even it's been a while since I've read A Dying Colonialism. I don't remember Fanon praising the UN's role in ending colonialism. So I think what's being done here is a little bit, maybe I'm misunderstanding. Maybe I'm, but was like that part was confusing to me. Fanon is one of the many sources quoted in Belgian filmmaker Johan Grimond Prez's remarkable soundtrack to a coup d'etat, a wildly creative film that may actually redefine the documentary as a means of mass communication. In addition to being nominated for right, but Fanon is referenced in an appropriate way as, and I don't remember, and not as praising the UN, because the UN is depicted as working against decolonization and is in advancing the reconquering of the Congo after the election of Lumumba. So Anyway, I'll check the chat in a minute. I may be missing some things. And Leah, if you're still interested, if you want to share any of your thoughts, I'll check for you in a second here. The film, I'm glad to see that it's getting some awards to the extent that that's important. Sundance's World Cinema Documentary Special Jury Award for Cinematic Innovation among them. I think it deserves all kinds of, because anyway, the presentation, I thought the documentary was just amazing here. It focuses on Patrice Lumumba, the anti-colonial leader who fought for the independence of the Congolese people against foreign imperial rule in what had been known as the Belgian Congo. Of course, that's Lumumba pictured here. In dialectically telling this story and much more, soundtrack to the coup d'etat dazzlingly interweaves various cinematic strands through archival footage and news clips, but also via African-American jazz music and the audio memoir of Nikita Khrushchev. The Soviet leader, renowned for spearheading the USSR's post-Stalinist thaw, emerges as a hero of soundtrack due to his vigorously championing the decolonization movement at the United Nations as newly emerging nations in Africa and Asia threw off their colonial shackles to become independent nations. He does. Khrushchev comes off real good in this documentary. He comes off as funny. He comes off as appropriately belligerent. And as an ally of liberation, pictured here hugging Fidel Castro when they met in Harlem. They show him pounding his fists, his delegation pounding their fists on the desks. And it says here, and what was the cause of Khrushchev's undiplomatic conduct and outrage? Demanding an end to foreign rule of the West African and Asian colonies and for their independence. There is also a scene in the Soviet premier bear hugging Fidel at the Hotel Teresa in Harlem, where the Cuban delegation to the UN was staying. And I don't know to what extent he didn't mean any of it, but Khrushchev comes off as legitimately loving the Cuban Revolution. And Castro. So the documentary also goes into the non-aligned movement. So you see and hear from Indonesia's Sukarno and Egypt's Gamal Abdel Nasser. And as I mentioned in my own review here, though, or reaction, whatever, the UN Secretary General Dag Hammarskjöld, who was deeply enmeshed in the unfolding events of the Congo, the Belgian king, the U.S. ambassador to the UN, Adlai Stevenson, President Dwight D. Eisenhower, are also prominently and far less favorably featured and their duplicity exposed. And I really thought that my one small criticism of the documentary is that they don't follow up on what happened to Hammarskjöld. They don't talk anything about his apparent assassination, which was depicted in another documentary I saw a couple of years ago that I thought was also very good, that about Dag, that depicted it and showed a Belgian mercenary who was on camera saying, "Yeah, I was part of the plane that shot his plane down." And the argument in that documentary was that Dag was trying to help the Congo, and that was why he was targeted. But in this documentary, he's depicted, I think, accurately as seemingly, I mean, they have a lot of evidence showing him not really, just he's fronting and in full support of getting rid of Lumumba. So I just wish they would have addressed his death at all in the documentary, and they don't. And then there's a lot of coverage of these jazz luminaries in what is called the coup d'etat, in the bringing of jazz to the continent as a mechanism of coverage for the CIA's efforts. The film alleges that the spy agency, the CIA, had influence in the visual arts and outs a high-ranking member of the Venerable Museum of Modern Art board as either a CIA operative or being in cahoots with the covert company. And it's not either a CIA operative. They say he was a CIA agent and also a major owner of some of the mining interests in the Congo. So it was overtly claiming that don't remember the name, but that, and they show him on camera. They show him. I mean, there's a lot there so it's not kind of either or. It's saying no, he was working with the CIA while also working with as part of this CIA effort to manipulate the arts, which we've talked about on a number of occasions around here. Then they remind us that Dizzy Gillespie ran a third party. By the way, Maya Angelou, for all that she's remembered and talked about, this part of her career never gets mentioned. And I don't know to what extent, honestly, I don't know to what extent at the end of her life she was trying to talk about it or how she talked about it. But she was involved in a positive promotion of anti-colonial Pan-Africanism. And I feel like I don't remember ever hearing her or anyone talk about that when talking about her. Certainly not in any of the Oprah. And what's that Spielberg movie they just remade where everybody was revisiting her again, and then her appearance in Juice. Remember, she had that brief appearance at the cookout in Juice. Anyway, but they also say, the documentary, which I thought was kind of funny. Did you know that trumpeter Dizzy Gillespie ran as a third party candidate in 1964, or where he had Thelonious Monk in his cabinet and Malcolm X in his cabinet, and it was interesting. But the documentary also reminds us that the uranium used in the atomic bombs that blew Hiroshima and Nagasaki to Kingdom Come came from the Congo as well. We do see that Abby Lincoln and Max Roach participated in a protest disrupting the UN Security Council chamber, shouting murderers, assassins to protest Lumumba's liquidation. The Bebop doc is a must-see for viewers interested in Lumumba, covert actions, anti-colonialism, jazz, CIA subversion of the arts, the UN, Khrushchev, and more. And I agree. And if any of you are interested in hearing more of what I thought of seeing the film, I'll put the link to the show description. You can check that out. But just suffice it to say, please go see the film. If you get a chance, see the film. And if you are involved in, if any of you who ever see this are involved in hosting events or run cinemas anywhere or have theater space, bring it. All right. All right. In the few minutes we have left here, let me play this. Let me move on here. Oh, actually, wait a minute. Leah, were you there? Did you share your thoughts? Did you want to join? Did you want to jump up here? Is Leah here? Maybe Leah had to dip out. I don't know. Let me know, Leah, if you got something that you want to say about having seen the documentary, or anyone else for that matter. Discord watch parties. That's a good idea. Oh, Leah's in a meeting. Okay, thank you. All right. Another time. All right. So in someone else's video from Occupy Democrats, it says here, MSNBC just uncovered a massive new Trump scandal. I'm just gonna play their replaying of this clip, and I was like, hold up. So I was like, I feel like I'm agreeing too much for my comfort levels. But let's check this out here.
Regulators have worked hard to keep crypto, which has been supremely volatile, blocked off from the rest of financial systems, so that if it crashes, it doesn't bring the entire US economy down with it, requiring a bailout. some rich people holding a lot of crypto disagree with that strategy. They want a bailout, implicit or explicit, if the house of cards comes crashing down. To that end, after Republicans took back the Senate with the help of money from the crypto industry, they now have a plan to return the favor. And I want you to listen to this part because no one's really talking about this, but the elements of the plot are just there in plain sight. Senate Republicans are working on a bill that would transfer billions and billions of dollars of money from the US government, from taxpayers, and hand it over to a handful of big crypto holders.
We got a present for President Donald Trump. Here it is. This is the Bitcoin Reserve Bill in the Senate of the United States to establish a Bitcoin strategic reserve, a network of secure storage vaults, purchase program, and other programs to ensure the transparent management of Bitcoin holdings of the federal government.
Yes, the Bitcoin Act from Republican Senator Cynthia Lummis of Wyoming. It would establish a federal reserve of Bitcoin. It's truly one of the most audacious schemes I've ever seen in Congress. Here's why. Rich folks who own a lot of crypto have a problem, right? Cryptocurrency, Bitcoin in particular, is a very valuable asset. Single Bitcoin worth over 100 grand. Some very, very wealthy people own hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin. David Sachs, for instance, has a lot of crypto. That said, it's not a liquid asset like cash that you can easily spend or invest or use for practical purposes. It has no practical use really outside of a few gimmicks, and it's very useful for criminal cartels. So if you're an investor, you're sitting on this speculative asset. You can't actually do anything with it, but it's worth a lot of money. What's more, if you try to sell it all off, right, to get rid of it, the hordes of Bitcoin on the exchanges, that's going to flood the market and tank the price. So what's the solution? They're going to sell it to the US government.
Over 5 years, the United States will assemble 1 million Bitcoin, 5% of the world's supply, and it will be held for a minimum of 20 years and can be used for one purpose: reduce our debt.
Reduce our debt? You can't pay the debt down in Bitcoin. Are you tracking this? Are you tracking what's being planned and announced in person here, right? The US government handing billions of dollars into the pockets of rich crypto holders? The plan is that the Bitcoin Act would have the government sell off some of its gold reserves, you know, the stuff in Fort Knox, and use the money to buy 1 billion Bitcoin. At current market value, that would cost $100 billion. Now, the actual price would likely be much higher because that market value would almost certainly rise as a result when a new buyer enters the market and boosts the price of the asset the buyer is now legally obligated to buy. This is an enormous heist. They're just backing the truck up to the government in front of all of us. A massive bailout to the crypto world. The opportunity to turn a speculative asset into real cash on your dime. And presumably David Sachs, as the crypto czar, will help usher that plan through. And there is a real irony here. For a long time, as long as I've been covering crypto, which is over a decade, advocates have sold crypto as this libertarian project, right? We don't need government. We don't need banks. We don't need financial intermediaries. We don't need regulation. Here's Sachs himself making that point on a podcast 2 years ago.
There is a huge risk of currency debasement when the government is in control, and particularly when you have the world's reserve currency. There's just such an enormous temptation to print money to finance your budget and to rack up loans that become unpayable. What Bitcoin offers is a different kind of currency where it's not backed by a government, it's backed by math, it's backed by encryption. And so you don't have to trust the government.
All of that lofty rhetoric goes right out the window, though, when Republicans decide they want the government to initiate a massive upward transfer of wealth and bail out the crypto industry. This isn't a...
So now the problem, though, one problem immediately with the coverage is that Kamala Harris was going to do probably the same thing. She was taking all that crypto money from her campaign to do the same thing. They were investing in her in the exact same way to get her to do the same thing in terms of appointing someone who would not likely be bring heavy oversight from the SEC. So that's one thing. The other thing that I wanted to remind everybody of, if you remember when I was having those debates with Reggie Middleton, with Bitcoin Zay, the author of Bitcoin in Black America, remember part of their core argument was that Black people don't need public policy, don't need political power, and in fact can't get political power until we have enough money to buy the politicians, and therefore we should be investing in Bitcoin. Meanwhile, as I was saying to them then, and am seeing the evidence of it now, the holders of all the real holders of Bitcoin absolutely want to fund politicians to go in here and do exactly what we're seeing take place. Use the government to back their asset, bolster their asset, making themselves more money, therefore further reducing the likelihood that Black people or anyone else could use this as a mechanism of closing existing gaps and divides. So again, everybody keeps telling Black people, you don't need political power, you need money. While the people who have money use their political power to first generate their wealth and then protect it and increase and develop more. That's why I keep saying, get past this investment nonsense and get political power, so that whether you own Bitcoin or not, if people are going to make money off of it, if wealth is going to be generated from anything in this society, it should be redistributed. And then we can start having conversations about new forms of governance and how wealth is created in the first place. But I just thought, all right. But okay, we can come back to all of that because Elon has joined us and says, and has something to say about Soundtrack to a Coup. Elon, good morning. Are you there?
Peace.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes. What's up?
Okay, so I just wanted to make a clarification because there were a lot of people in the chat asking how it can be streamed. So a little bit about the screenings that have gone on for this movie. It has only been screened in the festival circuit, and it is going to be streamed. Ironically, I'm using that word, Jab. I'm going to be using that word. Ironically, it is going to be streaming on Apple TV, January 7th. Currently, you can get it on DVD and Blu-ray, and you can also stream it via Plex on Solidarity Cinema. So I say ironic for Apple TV because there's such a critique about for Apple in the documentary, and I'm kind of wading through those feelings. I am thinking about, if you didn't know this about me, I used to program film briefly in my career, and
no, I didn't. What does that mean?
So I worked for a curatorial film department in a museum. And so that is what I did. And I also have worked countless film festivals. But I only, programmed film briefly. I was mostly crew and did miscellaneous things for film festivals. But at a larger institution, I briefly worked in programming. But, so I am trying to figure out the best method for how to use this for PE, because I agree with you. This needs to be seen. It's too kind of extraordinary to explain. And I really, really want as many Africans, especially in the US, to see this documentary, because it's just, I think it's incredible. So.
No, thank you for that. Absolutely. Wait, Obi, are you saying it's on Canopy? Or will be on Canopy?
I don't know if Obi is saying it is, or maybe in the future.
Which just reminds me that Morgan State cut our subscription again.
And speaking of, I need to correct you. So you can get access to Canopy for free if you get a Montgomery County, a DC Public Library, or a Baltimore County library card. You can access Canopy.
What about a Howard County library card?
You would have to check with Howard County, but yes, I know those three for sure. Because
wait a minute, but that doesn't change the fact that Morgan cut our subscription. I just want to point that out.
But you work in Baltimore County, so you can get a Baltimore library card and access Canopy.
So then I would have to ask my students to do the same. They would also have to get library cards in the county.
Yes,
access it that way. Okay, I'm working.
Obviously, if you want Morgan to reinstate the Canopy license and membership,
yeah,
obviously that is a separate struggle. But in the meantime, if you want to access Canopy, a lot of public libraries have licenses to Canopy, and you can access it that way. So
Look at you dropping gems. You should join us more often.
I wish I could. I can't show my face. Y'all will never know what I look like unless
you could do the Renee thing, but get you an icon and
Kamal does not like that. Kamal
Anybody worried about what Kamal likes? Don't nobody care what Kamal likes. No, it's all good. But
Yes,
thank you.
I
Appreciate
just
it.
wanted to share that just so there's clarification in the chat. And I hope again the film is more accessible. With the screening that I went to over the summer, the director was actually there, and I asked him, how can you make this more accessible? Because it was in the festival circuit. I saw it at the National Gallery of Art for free. And it was really great. And the majority of the people that attended were similar to how you saw it at AFI, old white people. And so, there were pockets of African people and younger folks. But it definitely not nearly enough. So
no, absolutely. We gotta all right, but I appreciate you sharing with us some alternatives, and this Canopy thing is a big reveal. I appreciate that. I'm gonna look into that over the next couple of weeks for sure.
Yes, you can get your Canopy fix.
Yeah,
while you petition for it to come back to Morgan.
You know why they took it off? You know why Morgan took it off, right?
Why?
Because there's a documentary I was in that's in there, and I think that's why they blocked it. They were like, they found the one documentary Jared was in, and they was like, get that out of here. We got to get rid of the whole service.
It was solely focused on you, huh?
Yeah, that was it. They were like, I'm telling you, that's why they did it. And so, but yeah, anyway, anything they can do,
Yeah. Well,
and More Than a Name is the documentary, by the way, about the Washington football team name.
Shameless plug.
Yeah.
Shameless plug.
Shameless plug. I was in it because I told my story how I started the great seat cushion throwing event at RFK Stadium. Again, these are the important,
These are the vital, necessary.
It's Lumumba to my seat cushion thing. I'm like right behind Lumumba in importance. That's no, no. But that's big though, because Canopy is dope. So I very much want to reconnect with that.
Yeah.
And
And I know I haven't been on. I mean, I haven't been on. This is my first time on the platform at, my voice. I'm always in the chat. But when Mtume came on the first time, I had met Mtume many years ago when I was in that programming position and planned a film festival. He probably does not remember me. I was I was a small kind of program assistant back then, and I had emailed him, and he was one of the jurors for the film festival. So when he came on the platform, I was like, oh wow, because I respect him so much. So I just wanted to say that real quick.
No, yeah, right on. Salute to Mtume. Looking forward to his next visit to the platform. And folks, if you can't wait that long, go to Patreon and get the recent discussion he had with the Saturdays crew about some films and politics and whatnot. But yeah, right on.
Well, I will leave you to it.
The Seat Cushion Rebellion. I'm trying to tell you.
Yes, we all need to watch that doc. What's the doc's name again?
More Than a Name. More Than a Name.
Okay, I'm gonna put it to watch.
Yeah. It's a couple years old now, but yeah, that was it. My Canopy appearance.
All right. Well,
yeah.
Hopefully you can get it back, access to Canopy, and you watch the doc again,
Free Canopy. Yeah, let's go. Thank you, Elon. I appreciate it. Join us anytime. Anytime.
Okay. Peace.
Peace. All right. Let me just do one more thing here before we wrap up. And then again, I'll be back at 12 noon today with Dr. Ray Wimbush talking about reparations. So please come back if you can. But I'm still working on this book chapter. It's especially given the folks that come around this platform. It's a little bit humbling and embarrassing that I'm struggling this much with a roughly 3,500 word chapter. What to put where, how to organize it, how to write what I want to say. I have so many issues with it. So salute to all of the prolific scholars and journalists and essayists. But I'm still working though. But one of the things, oh man, it's just so one of the things I'm looking at, I found this. So if folks, a couple of weeks ago, I did a little review of, this is from Jason Chambers, Madison Avenue, The Color Line, African Americans in the Advertising Industry. And Chambers has written something more recently about Black capitalist activism that I talked about. And which is basically the argument that Black people participating in the advertising and marketing community have played a positive role. And it's this thing that I'm struggling with in terms of the promotion of Black symbolic representation, presence, etc., is being in some cases written in as sort of a parallel to the liberation struggle. And it's by design or not, it's having an impact on the current discussion of the efficacy of Black capitalism and entrepreneurialism and buying Black and banking Black and helping Black people escape capital or capitalism. So I'm reading this, sections of it at least, and there's a brief part of chapter 1 where Chambers essentially summarizes. First, later in the book, he notes just explicitly, as I think I've mentioned, that so much of what we now see today as Black participation in the advertising community was a direct response of that community to A. Philip Randolph's efforts and other efforts to challenge Black people's relationship to the economy. So wherever you situate Randolph on the spectrum of liberation, even what Randolph was advocating in the early never to occur March on Washington, the original March on Washington, was enough of a threat to the business and political elite that they had to come up with some kind of response. So as Chambers notes here, as a direct response, the corporate world said, hire more Black people to work in the advertising community to create commercials and market to Black customers and bring a couple Black people in to employment in various businesses, but more importantly, bring the Black consumer base and the Black community more carefully and more comfortably from the perspective of whites into society. Take their money and then take their aspirations away from liberation and into, this is my summary of what this is not his argument. This is how I'm interpreting. He does say that the Randolph is there's a direct correlation, he says, between the hiring and Randolph's efforts. I'm now editorializing to say that the part of the goal, because he also does talk about how later, I think this is in his book about Burrell, later there is this conscious, hey, Nixon says, hey, Ray Kroc and McDonald's, will you hire some of these Negroes so I can get them off of this Black power and into this Black capitalism? And if they're franchising McDonald's stores and working in Black communities that we don't want to be in anyway, you know, we can redefine Black power and all this other kind of stuff. But Chambers is describing this as a positive, though. which is fascinating to me. So I noted here that there's a direct line from this again. I'll put all the videos and to my relative criticism of the work of Professor Halliday and her interview with Mark Anthony Neal. But there's this line that Chambers and Halliday seem to be drawing historically from the early 1900s, the first quarter of the 20th century, bringing where the advertising community is starting to recognize the potential in the buying power of Black consumers. But again, in its appropriate definition, that is the ability to enrich white companies with whatever quote unquote disposable income Black people have, not as an actual economic strength that could mitigate capitalism. And that distinction, I'm still struggling to convey or have, penetrate certain narratives. So Chambers talks about in here, again, a quick summary, just some of the early efforts to, as he says here, corporate recognition of the Black consumer market, notwithstanding, the actions of the African-American consumers demonstrate that they understood their economic power could either enhance or hinder sales. So whether he's doing it intentionally or not, Chambers is helping properly identify what buying power means and what, in this context, economic power means: to impact or hinder sales, not in the ability of the economic power to become a productive element for Black people, but in its relative impact on the sales of white products to Black consumers. By the late 1930s, there had been several instances of African-American consumers actively using their economic power to press for better treatment and employment. Blacks found that they could not only use their buying power to ensure success in programs like that developed by the Rumford Company, but also to achieve other employment and economic goals. What was the buying power in this Rumford experiment that is mentioned here? Rumford was the Rumford program was a program to hire. What was their product? What was Rumford creating? Now I don't remember that part. But Rumford is a white-owned company that let me just back up here. Oh, because there's actually some. I don't know if anybody remembers this, but a couple of years, I don't know when I did this, but I did a review of how Roland Martin brought up the work of Claude Barnett and the ANP, the African, oh man, I don't think he was called African. Now I can't, Claude Barnett and the Black press that he created, that was supposed to be the Black version of the Newswire, of the Associated Press. And I was trying to point out in that video, I was showing how Roland Martin was misreading Gerald Horne's work on that history. But Barnett, anyway, what Barnett was doing with the AMP, and I'll was a pioneering effort in bringing white corporate advertising to the Black commercial press, and initiating or being an early exemplar of this contradiction of having a Black commercial press, the Associated Negro Press, that's the ANP, the Associated Negro Press, and was an early exemplar of this contradiction of having a Black commercial press needing white advertising, white corporate advertising to survive, a problem that exists to this day. And we see it with Roland Martin and others making overt pitches to these white companies to advertise with them. And then what might this mean in terms of their coverage, particularly as it relates to economic coverage? And the Rumford program was an effort, a collaboration with Barnett and the AMP for Barnett, the Rumford program had the potential to support his efforts to generate corporate attention to the Black press and the Black consumer market. By using the press to create awareness of the Rumford experiment, it could demonstrate its ability to move Black consumer population to action. And by action, it means buy white products. And when they saw that there was success in this, this was somewhere around 1920, somewhere around 1920, 1930, somewhere 1928, I believe. Somewhere between 1928 and 1932, if I'm not mistaken. But what this signified was that there is potential in white advertising to Black consumers to get Black consumption of white-owned products. And this is what buying power means. It is not a power to do anything else. It's a power to buy white-owned products. And as Chambers writes here, that let's see, there were that this was connected to efforts to don't buy where you can't work campaigns, to strengthen the ability of Black people to be hired and not first fired, to have Black businesses supported by white advertisers, and so on. But what he doesn't mention in here, or anywhere in this book, that is, because I did check for that, is that as this is happening in the 1930s, Abram Harris and other Black and other economists were already saying that this stuff doesn't work. That all these campaigns of don't buy where you can't work and buy Black, all that they end up doing is redirecting relative amounts of consumption to Black-owned businesses. Or it, as Chambers talks about positively, only results in the hiring of a few Black people into white corporations, and therefore, in both instances, creating and reifying and solidifying a Black bourgeoisie, who Harris says is the #1 exploiter of the Black community. I think he goes a little far with that, but the point being that there's that Chambers and others have been producing for a while a good amount of academic literature that is supportive of Black symbolic inclusion and advance. And it's getting confused in the analysis of targeted Black audiences who unwittingly are being invited to this fantasy of Black capitalist inclusion or inclusion within the United States, I don't know, grand plan. So Chambers, by the way, he points out that in the effort to use this so-called economic power to get concessions from white companies, he says here, this is not to say that Blacks did not support Black businesses, but the argument that came to dominate discussions of how best to direct Black consumer power emphasized using it to attract attention from white corporations. Alban Halsey of the Colored Merchants Alliance wrote, quote, "At this particular time, the proper use of our buying power is so closely related to our economic liberation and is such an important factor in our civic adjustments that it transcends in potential power all other defensive tactics." Listen to what Chambers is saying here. On the one hand, the idea of buying power and don't buy where you can't work and buy Black and was used to get concessions from white corporations to advertise in Black commercial media, to hire a few Black workers, to hire Black ad agencies, and marketers, which is a big component of Chambers' focus here. But it's the head of the Colored Merchants Alliance, who is even as Chambers says, the argument that came to dominate discussions of how best to direct Black consumer power emphasized using it to attract attention from white corporations. Even as that became the dominant message, that is still to this day that is to this day still the dominant message, is that buying power is meant to attract white ad revenue, white money, white corporate money. Even as these chambers are saying that, at the time, the head of the Colored Merchants Alliance was still saying and initiating and sort of helping build the foundation of the claim that still exists to this day, that buying power is so closely related to our economic liberation and is such an important factor in our civic adjustments that it transcends in potential power all other defensive tactics. So that's why, to this day, as frustrated as I may be, I can't be mad at people who want to tell me I'm wrong about my argument around buying power, because for so long it has been a foundation of the mythology and narrative that has been promoted from a Black business community and a Black business press to Black communities. We don't need armed struggle. We don't need radical political organization. We don't need socialism. We don't need any other form of movements around political power, redistribute. We don't need any of that. All of that pales in comparison to the potential power of our buying power. By the mid-1930s, most analysis of Black purchasing power centered on them as a revenue source for white-owned corporations. And again, Chambers is framing this as a positive. In ultimately praising the Black marketers, campaigners, ad companies, the people focused on Black consumption and Black-owned media as the heroes of this story. Not recognizing that they have promoted and been used to promote, even when he does recognize the Nixon use of it. It's still to praise the people who went and did the work to create a world today where you have Black participation in marketing and Black presence in commercials and an elevated Black bourgeoisie. And as I wrote in my notes here, the evolution claimed is that the argument went from being a focus on Black-owned businesses and how buying power could benefit those businesses, and by 1930s was already about attracting white money. The Chicago Defender is quoted here saying, quote, large white corporations could accelerate this movement, that is Black consumer support, by making the proper gestures for these acres of Black diamonds. So you have the Black press referring to Black consumers as to be mined as acres of Black diamonds by the white corporate world. Timid experiments, as white financial magnates call them, will not bring the results in either volume or trade or sustain loyalty. Large corporations, which now enjoy the accidental patronage of the race, capital R, could, with bold recognition of the market and the proper selection of leaders and personnel from the race, increase their sales to the exclusion of all other competitors. Any large corporation which starts with such a program of definitely catering to the race and uses imagination and capable race leadership and counsel will find its money and time well invested, and the yield 1,000-fold. So again, from the 1930s, 100 years already, we have the Black commercial press, the Black bourgeoisie and entrepreneurial class saying Black consumers again, turning over Black consumers to white corporate ad buyers as Black diamonds, not as black diamonds, but as the raw source material to be mined and commodified. In contrast to the early 20th century, when Booker T. Washington argued for using black buying power to enhance black-owned business, that power was now more broadly conceived. Yet the term, listen to that language. Booker T. Washington was too narrow in focusing on buying power helping black businesses, as wrong as that was. Garvey, who he doesn't mention in here, does he mention Garvey at all? Who was saying the same thing, because of course he was a Booker T, a Washingtonian. Garvey's attempts at using buying power for his purposes are not. Yeah, then Garvey's not mentioned in here at all, I don't believe. But the point is, Booker T. Washington's efforts are seen as insufficient and less evolved, because now more broadly conceived, we can get this money. Yet the turn that Barnett, Edwards, and others advocated in the 1930s was less than a rejection of Washington's philosophy than an evolution of it. Barnett and other black leaders did not reject Washington philosophy as much as they recognized that the interests of blacks' consumer power could effectively lead to both an enhancement of their stature in America and the further development of some black-owned businesses, especially newspapers. Oh my goodness.
Message.
As a result, black newspaper representatives increased their efforts to compile research information about black consumers in an effort to interest corporations in the positive impact blacks' spending could generate. Oh my goodness.
Message.
And
now listen.
it's framed as a positive, but what he's saying is my point framed again upside down. The idea that buying power is some revolutionary activity is a concoction of a collusion of the white corporate advertising, the needs of the white corporate advertising, and the collection of that ad revenue by a black commercial press. And they said, and it's called an evolution. Oh man, black buying power helping black businesses? What good is that? It's understood. How could that help? Black businesses don't generate enough money to support the black press in the way the black press wants to be supported. That's why to this day, Roland Martin has to give his routine screeds condemning the white corporate world for rejecting or devaluing the black press, because the black business community doesn't exist in a way that can support the needs of a black commercial press and its advertising budget desires. In the same way, it cannot satisfy the consumer needs of a black consumer, of black consumers. There are not enough black-owned businesses with enough scalable capability to produce everything that we think we want or that we actually need, including a black press that wants to live more lavishly than those of us at Black Liberation Media, where we are demonetized permanently. All right, everybody. I don't know what else to say. The more, I mean, it's just so revealing. It was recognized already 100 years ago that buying power had nothing to do with building up black businesses and black communities, and is only a measure of the ability to enrich white corporations and bring, as it was said here, 1,000-fold return. That's the black press. The Chicago Defender was saying that black consumers should be confronted as a natural resource, as black diamonds that will produce 1,000-fold profit if you invest in them. All right. Listen, I'll be back in a couple hours with Ray Winbush to talk about reparations. It's been a lot of fun. I love being back live on a Monday morning. Big thanks to Elon for joining me and us. Big thanks to the rest of the remixers for coming through. To those who will see and hear this later, thanks to you as well. And peace to all of you. Only if you're willing to fight for it, like Fred Hampton used to say. And I'll catch you next time right here at
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.
What do you sacrifice? Calm, kindness, kinship, love. I've given up all chance at inner peace. I made my mind a sunless space. I share my dreams with ghosts. I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago for which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do. My anger, my ego, my unwillingness to yield, my eagerness to fight, that set me on a path from which there's no escape. I yearn to be a savior against injustice without contemplating the cost, and by the time I look down, there's no longer any ground beneath my feet. What is my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. Now, the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror or an audience or the light of gratitude. So what do I sacrifice? Everything, 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 everything.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.